Now, Power Rangers, because it adapts from the Super Sentai series, it's going to have to take a lot of elements from the stories that Sentai does. But they can change them to whatever way they want or even improve them. So I'm going to be comparing Green Ranger and Dragon Ranger from MMPR and Jew Rangers and see which one comes out on top. Now, the origin story of the Green Ranger in MMPR was unfortunately Tommy Oliver, this new kid who came in to Angel Grove High, was picked by Rita as her new Green Ranger. Rita didn't care who she got for the Green Ranger. All she wanted to know, can the person fight? And Tommy was the best choice. On the other hand, Burai in Jew Ranger was a very complicated and sad story. What happened in Sentai was that Burai and Geki, they are brothers. Their father, the Black Knight, went after the king and queen of the Yamato tribe. Now, all the Jew Rangers belong to different tribes, and they're basically the tribe leaders. The king and queen of the Yamato tribe could not bear an heir. So what happened with the Black Knight, he betrayed them, wanted to kill the king and take over the Yamato tribe. In his defiance, he took Geki as his adopted son. And because of this, the Black Knight went after the king again. He got killed, and Burai swore to get back at the Yamato tribe. Geki, because, all intents and purposes, he saw him as a betrayer. So while all the other Jew Rangers went into their sleep, waiting for Bentor to return, Burai basically did the same thing in order to act out his revenge. Now, in MMPR, we know that Jason and Tommy are not brothers. They didn't bother adapting that element of the Jew Ranger story. However, Tommy and Jason became very close friends. Tommy and Jason are very comparable in fighting styles, and they complement each other. And, there are several episodes like Gung Ho, for example, where they have to learn to work with each other. This was like one of the few things that Jason had built that repertoire of, like, I know what you're going to do, let's do it, without even talking. That was like their greatest asset because they worked very well together. Now, in Geki and Burai's case, due to the story, even though eventually, Burai forgave Geki, couldn't really get delved into due to, him being evil for a good chunk of the beginning part of his arc. And then when he finally became good, and, he couldn't be with the Jew Rangers on a regular basis due to his time limit. Burai, he wasn't sealed away in a mirror and protected by bars unlike the others. During the millennia that he was sleeping, there was a massive earthquake. His tomb was damaged, and he was officially, technically dead. Daijujin, he's a god in Jew Rangers, he decided to bring him back to life because we ultimately needed him, because he had command of Dragon Caesar, and they needed his power in order to stop Pandora. But it was a limited time deal. Every time Burai was active, whether he's using his ranger suit or outside, basically a special being that was able to control the flow of time, he knew what was going to happen to him, so he gave him an option. Stay in this special room and you will live forever. However, if you leave, your life will be depleted. Because of these limitations in the story, they never could really develop that sibling aspect. Burai was a very interesting character. I liked his backstory, and it also hurt Geki. Just like Jason, Geki had the exact same problem. They didn't get to do that many episodes with Geki because of that. Now, with Tommy, we all remember his appearances in the show. It was very restricted due to the Sentai footage. So they had to think of situations and reasons why Tommy was missing during a lot of the key fights. That kind of made Tommy annoying / stupid. It became a trait of the character, but it was very annoying when he was either tied up by putties onto a tree, which was dumb as hell. Other times, his communicator was like, he took it off, so he was training, and like, all the other Rangers never do this. The communicator was damaged in one episode, and Miss Appleby took it, so that was one excuse as well. That was the aspect of the character I never liked, because it was just dumb, and I understand they had to deal with Sentai footage, but I wish they had thought of it a different way. Now, in Burai's case, he was dealing with, his time limit in his life, and he was locked away in this special time room. Now, you would think this would be kind of boring for the audience, but no, this is how we learn his backstory and why he had a grudge with Geki and why he went after the Jew Rangers and why Bandora used that hatred and anger to her advantage and try to use him as a pawn in order to get rid of the Jew Rangers. Now, everyone knows in MMPR, Tommy lost his powers thanks to Rita and the Green Candle. They desperately tried everything they could in order to stop him losing his powers. They even made this device to go into the alternate dimension where Jason went in and basically got sealed away. He had to fight Goldar on his own. He was separated from his powers. They don't work in there. All these problems were built up till it was the biggest failure in MMPR's history, and I think it's the crowning moment for the series itself and what kept the franchise going for 30 years. Even though there were a ton of people who hated Jason David Frank and / Tommy leaving the show, you wanted the show to stay on. You wanted more and more and more, and that's why, you know, Tommy became this iconic character for good and bad reasons. Now, in Jew Ranger's case, though, Burai actually dies. The situation was dire, and so Burai, on his last bit of life, sacrificed himself in order to stop the monsters from destroying the city. It was a very sad moment, and one of the very few times Super Sentai ever kills off a character. It was a really touching and emotional moment, and I remember the first time of seeing it. It annoyed me the most because the first time Geki and Burai were able to actually share something interesting, emotional. I ultimately think for the origin story, I think Burai was much more interesting. Tommy, you know, he was very simplistic. He just came to Angel Grove, met Kimberly, liked her. It was a fine introduction, but compared to Burai's backstory and him wanting his revenge and killing Geki and the Jew Rangers and nearly doing it, that was much more interesting. As for the relationship between, you know, Geki and Burai and Jason and Tommy, that's going to go to Jason and Tommy. Ultimately, because of this time limit and restriction because of him being evil and then unable to leave this room. And the worst thing, he really didn't get any interactions with the other Jew Rangers, except for that time where they had to unlock Ultimate Daijujin available to them. That was the only time he really was a part of the team as a whole. So that goes to Tommy and Jason. As for the appearances, right, he was much more interesting than Tommy being tied to a tree, forgetting his communicator, going to a karate tournament and the last second he gets called away and has to help the Rangers and whatnot. Or he forgets his power morpher in his bag, things like that. I can't trust him anymore, and it got old fairly quickly. So this one has to go to Burai. The loss of the Green Ranger. Now this one's a very hard choice because both of them are excellent. Even though Burai emotionally would be more impactful because he actually dies and the powers go to his brother, Tommy losing the powers is equally emotional and sad because not that many shows do this for many reasons. You know, it's a detriment, you know, financially for the company. It's like, oh, you had a really cool character and he's dead. So like, will the product sell? Will you piss off the audience who will like, well, I don't want to buy any of his stuff. He's dead. Who cares? And obviously there was a lot of backlash to this decision because Tommy became an important, popular character. And the writers would never have known this. They were writing on a TV show that was intended to have 40 episodes. It was extremely low budget. It was a miracle they even survived that first test pilot because most pilots, if they do bad, they usually crap the show and say, no, it's not worth it. But they got a second chance, they improved on it, and it was just by sheer luck they hit, you know, the money load. And don't tell me no one loved that moment when, you know, it was episode 40, they stopped, you know, Lokar and Goldar's Zord, and they come to meet all the, you know, the people down at the stadium to congratulate the Rangers. It was a really great moment to see Tommy. Thanks for doing everything, and you're still acknowledging, you know, Tommy being a part of the team. And the same goes to Burai's death. Seeing him in Geki's arms and knowing, yeah, I don't care. It was worth it. I saved you. I saved the city. I saved the world. I saved even the gods. So it was probably his best way to go. The powers didn't die. They continued on it through Geki. So you're always reminded of, you know, Burai's sacrifice. There's always going to be pros and cons when Power Rangers has to adapt any plotline, any character from Super Sentai because of various rating restrictions, or, you know, because the characters are ultimately different. Power Rangers is supposed to be a different series from Super Sentai. This will affect how stories and plot lines get adapted, used, or even removed. So going into any PR season, you're never going to expect like how it's going to change and be used in PR, which is why I always stood for the fact that any Super Sentai season could be adapted. Even the ones they said, oh, you know, Tokuger, because of the whole train thing, it couldn't be adapted. It couldn't be adapted because of financial reasons, not because, oh, it's a weird, you know, train show that had the Rangers actually be kids originally and all this other stuff and dimensions. And those things can be adapted. The question is how well. A season from Super Sentai could be excellent, but then the PR season could be horrible, or the vice versa happens. That has happened in a few occasions. If you guys have a suggestion, story, or character you would like me to delve into more like this, leave a comment down below, and you may see it in the next video.